The biggest tournament in terms of popularity and publicity in Trackmania is the ZrT Trackmania Cup, a cup hosted by the French streamer ZeratoR. Since the start back in 2013, the cup has been more known for its unique type of maps, focusing more about the show factor rather than having polished and calculated maps. But even with this unique type of maps, the cup is growing and growing for every year, and we'll most likely see the biggest and most popular edition hosted in 2019. But what players have had success in the event, and who has written themselves into the history books of the ZrT Trackmania Cup? The first edition of the ZrT Trackmania Cup was hosted back in October of 2013. The kickoff edition of the cup was hosted online and with a prize pool of €1,000. And when you think about the ZrT Cup, a player that pops up in your head is the Canadian player Carl Jr. Without spoiling too much, he is a player that will have its impact on this video moving forward. But in the first edition of the cup, Carl Jr. ended up being knocked out by the Estonian player Sander in the semi-final. In the first ever grand final of the ZrT Trackmania Cup, we saw Sander from Estonia, Marius89 from Germany, Koens from the Netherlands and Devil from Germany facing off against each other. 3 rounds would be played on the different maps with a point limit of 100 with finalist mode. On the first map it was Koens who started off the best and won the first round. However, the 2 upcoming rounds would end up being a Sander show, and he won both round 2 and 3. So even without finishing round 1, it was the Estonian player Sander who left map 1 as the leader with 20 points. Once we entered the second map, it was once again Koens who started off the best, and he took round 1 on this map as well. And Koens followed up that with taking second in round 2 and in round 3, and with this the player from the Netherlands was now the overall leader. The third map of the final ended up being a map where the German player Marius89 had the most success on, winning round 1 in front of Sander and Koens, before Koens won round 2 in front of Marius89, before we once again saw Marius89 taking home a round win. But in the overall lead we still had Koens, but now trailing the closest we had Marius89. The momentum Marius89 had from map 3 he continued having on map 4 and took home the first round win. Koens ended up winning round 2 and round 3 and once again left the map as the overall leader. Map 5 ended up being the same as map 1. Do you remember what happened there? Well, it happened again. Koens won round 1 before Marius89 won round 2. The last round on map 5, it was once again Koens who ended up winning. Koens who now became the first player to reach finalist status. And in reality it was only Marius89 who had a chance of catching up to him. The first finalist attempt for Koens ended up being a close battle against Marius89. A battle that the German ended up winning with 700s in the end. Marius89 now also entered finalist status. The first attempt for Marius89 ended up with making an early mistake, while Koens, who now had his second try at finalist status, fought a close battle against Sander until the end. A battle that the Estonian ended up winning. But Koens didn't let his 2 first tries affect him. In his third attempt to win it all, Koens proved that there is something to the saying, the third time is the charm, and he won the round and he became the first ever champion of the ZrT Trackmania Cup. Marius89 took second, while Sander and Devil took third and fourth. The second edition of the cup took place in March of 2015. Once again hosted online with a prize pool of €1,000, a point limit of 100 with finalist mode. In the final we had Wally from Canada, Scrappy from Belgium, Carl Jr. from Canada and the defending champion Koens from the Netherlands. The final started off well for the two Canadians, Wally winning round 1 in front of Carl Jr., while Carl Jr. won round 2 in front of Wally. And the Canadian player Wally continued on map 2 with winning round 1 in front of Scrappy and Carl Jr., while Koens didn't finish. And it didn't stop there for Koens, having trouble as well on round 2. While Scrappy took home the round win in front of Carl Jr. Although Koens had better success in round 3, he still finished behind Carl Jr. But it's safe to say that Koens and map 2 ain't going down in the history as best friends, and Koens once again had some troubles.
Hey Koens?
Yeah, what?
Nonetheless, Carl Jr. won the round in front of Scrappy and Wally. And the streak of wins Carl Jr. had from map 2 continued on map 3, winning round 1 and round 2, while Scrappy took round 3 before Carl Jr. once again won a round. So when we left map 3, Carl Jr. had built up a lead of 20 points over the others. Map 4 started with Wally winning the round in front of Carl Jr. before Carl Jr. took home round 2 in a close battle. In round 3 of map 4 we finally saw Koens having some luck in the final and winning a round. The last round of the map Carl Jr. won and ended up being the first to reach finalist status, while Scrappy was the closest with 74 points. And in his first finalist attempt in round 1 on map 5, Carl Jr. didn't waste any time, taking the lead from the start and keeping it until the finish line, winning the ZrT Trackmania Cup 2, while Scrappy finished second, while Wally and Koens finished third and fourth. The third edition of the cup took place online with €1,000 in the prize pool, cup mode with a point limit of 100 points with finalist mode. In the final we saw the defending champion Carl Jr. from Canada face off against Bren from France, Marius89 from Germany and Orwell from France. And it was the defending champion from Canada who started off the best. Carl Jr. won round 1 in front of Bren and Orwell. Then Bren was able to take round 2 and round 3 before Carl Jr. took the last round as well. So leaving map 1, Bren had the lead over Carl Jr. And then there was already a little drop down to Marius89 and Orwell. Map 2 ended up having the same start as map 1, Carl Jr. winning round 1. And when it looked like Marius89 would get his first win of the final, he got overtaken by Orwell on the very last meter. And being overtaken in the end is something that Bren and Marius89 can talk about after this final, because on round 3 Carl Jr. overtook Bren in the end. But Bren got his revenge and he won the last round of the map. So when we left map 2 it was still 2 players fighting for first, while the 2 others couldn't really keep up. Once we entered map 3, Marius89 finally got his round win and won in front of Carl Jr. The next round it was the 2 Frenchies who took first and second, with Bren winning it. Before we had Carl Jr. winning round 3 and round 4. So after 3 maps we started to see a little gap between Carl Jr. and Bren as well, with Carl Jr. leading with 10 points. And on map 4, Bren and Carl Jr. fought it out in round 1, Bren winning it in front of the Canadian. Carl Jr. was now only 1 round win away from finalist status, while Bren was still 16 points away. And once Carl Jr. smells finalist status and victory, he's hard to stop, it seems, driving a time just 300ths from the ZrT Mania record. But the first finalist attempt for the defending champion didn't start off the best, and Carl Jr. crashed in the second section of the map. But your mistake doesn't matter when other players make bigger mistakes, and Carl Jr. had full control over the round, and he was able to defend his ZrT title and become the first ever 2-time champion of the cup. In 2016, we for the first time saw the cup taking place offline, meaning that the semi-final and the grand final of the cup was played on a stage in Paris, France. This time having a prize pool of 2,000 euros, a point limit of 120 points with finalist mode. In the first ever offline grand final, we saw the 2-time defending champion Carl Jr. from Canada facing off against his countryman Wally, Javi Flyer from Spain, and Bren from France. The grand final started off with Wally taking the win in front of Javi Flyer, while the 2 Dignitas players finished 3rd and 4th. But playing on stage in front of his own countrymen, Bren didn't want to let them down and won round 2, as well as winning round 3. The last round of map 1 went to Javi Flyer, so when we left map 1 it was the home crowd favorite Bren who had the lead over Javi Flyer and Wally, while the 2-time defending champion Carl Jr. was last with only 11 points. And having the support from the home crowd seemed to help Bren on the second map as well, taking home the first round win. But from there on and out on map 2 it was a Spanish show, Javi Flyer winning round 2, winning round 3 and winning round 4. So once we left map 2, it was Javi Flyer who was the new guy in the lead in front of Bren and Wally, while Carl Jr. was still placing last. But being last in a grand final isn't a place Carl Jr. is used to being at, and certainly don't like being at. On map 3 we finally got to see what the 2-time defending champion of the cup could do, and he won his first round of the match. But once it looked like there was some hope of a comeback, Javi Flyer once again was able to win a round, and now having a lead of 23 points. The gap got a little bit smaller after Javi Flyer failed the finish in round 3, while Bren secured himself a 10-pointer. And the round after we saw the gap increase to single digits once again, with Bren winning another one, while Javi Flyer finished last. The first round on map 4 we only saw the 2 Canadians finishing, Carl Jr. taking 10 points, with Wally taking 6. And it seemed like Carl Jr. liked this map, winning the next round as well, with setting a new personal best time on that map. While Javi Flyer had troubles in the end of the map and placed last. The following round was won by Wally in front of Carl Jr. and Javi Flyer, and once it looked like the momentum for Javi Flyer was over and the other was just getting closer and closer, Javi Flyer took the win in the last round on map 4 and left the map with an 11-point lead over Carl Jr. However, it was just 18 points between all 4 players. Bren, who now found himself in last place entering map 5, found himself winning the first round and making the gap up to Javi Flair and Carl Jr. smaller. But letting someone else having a chance at taking the lead wasn't something Javi Flair wanted to happen. And once again we saw the Spanish player winning a round in this final. But once Carl Jr. starts smelling the prize money getting stacked up and seeing himself lift up the trophy, he is a hard player to stop. And now Carl Jr. only found himself 5 points behind Javi Flair, and both having a chance at reaching finalist mode in the upcoming round. And even with having the start to the match Carl Jr. had, he was still the first player to reach finalist status. Javi Flair was 2 points away, while Bren was 13 points away. After having played all maps in the final one time, we once again entered the first map of the final. And if you remember back to the first time we played this map, it wasn't Carl Jr.'s favorite one. And in his first finalist attempt, he ended up flipping around. And once it looked like Javi Flair would secure himself 10 points and a finalist status, he made our hearts skip a beat in the end. Nonetheless, Javi Flair entered the next round as a finalist together with Carl Jr. And the upcoming round ended up being a close battle between Carl Jr. and Javi Flair from the start, switching off on having the lead. And just when you thought that this was gonna be a two-man battle and it seemed like Carl Jr. would take his third title home to Canada, a French guy wanted to have a say, and Bren denied both Carl Jr. and Javi Flair the win and now entered finalist status as well. But even with being so close to winning in the previous round, it didn't seem to put either Carl Jr. or Javi Flair off their game. Both still having their eyes on the trophy and both fighting until the end of the next round. But in the end, we saw a new champion being crowned and Javi Flair become the third player to ever win a ZrT Trackmania Cup, while Bren took second, while Carl Jr. once again found himself finishing in on the podium in the grand final. In 2017, we once again saw ZeratoR booking a venue to host the semi and the grand final. This time we headed to Lyon in France to crown a winner of the 5th edition. ZrT Trackmania Cup 2017 had a prize pool of 2017 euros. Cup mode with finalist mode with a point limit of 120 points. And for the first time we didn't see the defending champion return to the final. However, the winner of the 2nd and the 3rd edition, Carl Jr., had once again secured himself a spot in the grand final. In the final we also saw a familiar face in Bren from France, while the 2 other players had qualified to the first final ever in the ZrT Trackmania Cup, Revolution from Germany and Papou from France. The final started off with the most decorated ZrT player, Carl Jr., taking the first round in front of the 2 Frenchies. And it's safe to say that Carl Jr. had a better start to this final this year, and already after 2 rounds he had close to double of the points he had collected on map 1 in 2016. And in round 3 he finished the hat-trick and he had won all rounds played on this map. Once we entered the 2nd map, the showman ZeratoR had put in a challenge for the players, Every time you reached a respawnable checkpoint, you had to run to a button on the stage and press it before you returned to your computer and drove to the next respawnable checkpoint. And the player who had the best running shoes on in Lyon was the German Revolution, and he took round 1. However, the next round didn't go Revolution's way, and after he retired, he had to watch the other run back and forth on the stage. This time it was Papou who could collect his first round win of the final. Once we got back to just driving in a more relaxed format, it was once again Carl Jr. who collected the round win, and already 6 maps into the final, he had a 17 points gap down to the closest opponent. And just when it looked like Bren would get his first win of the evening, the Canadian once again showed up and crossed the finish line first. And by now I think you can guess who won round 3. Well, it was once again Carl Jr. getting his 6th win of the final and now leading with 29 points. But having different maps in the map pack for an event, there are some maps that suits some better than others, and the 4th map started off best for Revolution with winning round 1. And he somehow also won round 2, but once the Germans started to dream of a perfect map, a Canadian showed up to crush that dream. The 5th map of the grand final started off with once again Carl Jr. winning this round, this time in front of Papou and Revolution. Carl Jr. had now a lead of 37 points over the others, who were rather close to each other. But when it looked like Carl Jr. would cruise into another win, his back wheels clipped outside the block and he let Revolution and Papou pass him. And talking about mistakes and crashes, that ended up being the story in round 3 as well. Bren and Carl Jr. battled it out for the first place, but both crashing before the last checkpoint, allowing Papou to more or less get a free win. Do you remember ZrT Cup 3? Well, the map that Carl Jr. dominated there and ended up winning the cup on was more or less back for this cup as well, at least the first half of it. And with already having a solid final so far and now having a favorite map coming up, Carl Jr. didn't waste any time before he collected the first round win on that map, now being only 6 points away from finalist status. But why take 6 points when you can take 10? And Carl Jr. once again proved just how solid of a player he is on this map, winning in front of Bren and Revolution. Now having 1 round left on the map, this time being the only finalist, with the Revolution being the closest player with 82 points. But just as it started to look like Carl Jr. was unbeatable, also he showed that he is human. The round was instead won by Bren in front of Papou. Once we once again switched map for the final, it was Bren who found himself winning. Now the others started to get closer and closer to a potential finalist mode themselves. The second round of this map ended up being an intense battle between Papou and the finalist Carl Jr., with Papou having the lead the most of the round. But just when you thought that Papou would deny Carl Jr., the Frenchman crashed and allowed Carl Jr. to pass him, and for the 3rd time in his career win the ZrT Trackmania Cup. And it's safe to say that this performance by Carl Jr. is a frontrunner for the strongest performance we have seen at the ZrT Trackmania Cup. And at second place we had Papou, while Bren and Revolution finished 3rd and 4th. Last year the fans of ZeratoR and Trackmania once again turned their focus towards towards France, this time being Toulouse. The 2018 edition of the Cup had a prize pool of 2018 euros. Cup mode with finalist mode with a point limit of 150 points. And for the 5th time in his career, Carl Jr. once again found himself in a grand final of the ZrT Trackmania Cup. And someone who is also used to being in the final of this cup is Bren, who now entered his 4th ZrT Cup final. The two others, Papou and Aurel from France, had both been in one final each. The final started off with arguably the hardest map of the pack, and a player who is familiar with hard maps is the former RPG player Bren. And he had success in round 1 as well, taking it down in front of Papou and Carl Jr. The second round ended up being more or less the same, and was clear that Bren had an upper hand on this map, winning it with 20 seconds over Papou, who finished second. And if you thought driving Trackmania with your hands was hard, ZeratoR had now put up a challenge for the players. This time the challenge was to drive the cars using their feet and stepping on the different arrows on the floor. Once the players had taken their dancing shoes on, or like Carl Jr. taking them off, we were ready to see what players would handle this the best. And in the first round it was in fact only one player who was able to finish the map, and that player was Papou. But even with driving in just his socks, Carl Jr. was still able to collect a round win and was the only player who finished the last round on ZrT dancing. After the dancing session was over, we returned to normal driving. This time it was Aurel who collected his first win of the final. The round after, Aurel finished second behind his teammate Papou from Gamers Origin, and finishing second was something Aurel was able to do once again in the round after, this time behind Bren. So entering the last round of the map, Carl Jr. was the only one who hadn't won a round on this map. So how did the last round go? Well, you guessed right, Carl Jr. won it, and after 3 maps of the final was played, it was only 3 points between top 3. The following map ended up with Papou winning in front of Carl Jr. And once it looked like Bren would be able to cross the line first, he missed the finish, and it was Papou who once again could cross the line first. And the streak of Gamers Origin players crossing the line first continued, but this time it was Aurel who finished first. But not wanting this to be a Gamers Origin show, the ZratoR sponsored players Bren and Carl Jr. to control over the last round, with Bren finishing ahead of Carl Jr. And the duo looked to take first and second once we had switched map as well, but once again Bren missed the finish and allowed Carl Jr. to finish first. However, Bren didn't let this affect him, and he bounced back, winning round 2 and winning round 3, before once again he failed the finish in round 4. Once we once again switched map, it was Bren who won in front of Carl Jr. The following round was won by Papou in front of Bren, but whereas the previous map was a map that Bren had the upper hand on, this map was a closest one. The third round was won by Carl Jr. in front of Aurel, but instead of having 4 rounds and 4 different round winners, Bren took his second win of the map and reached 120 points. But remember, this final has a point limit of 150 points. The first round on the next map was won by the 3-time ZeratoR champion Carl Jr., who now also overtook the overall lead of the final. And it seemed like the Canadian liked this map, because on the second round he also took the second round win of the map. However, the hat-trick on that map for Carl Jr. was denied by Papu. And when it looked like Bren would close in on Carl Jr. in terms of points, he failed the finish, and Carl Jr. won the round and became the first player to reach finalist status. But after having played all maps without crowning a champion, we returned to the first map again. A map that Bren won 2 out of 2 times the first time around. But in his first finalist attempt, the defending champion, Carl Jr. had some problems, while Bren won the round and now was only 3 points away from finalist status himself. Entering the last round of the map that Carl Jr. had said in a podcast before the event that he wouldn't have a chance against Bren at. The Canadian showed just why he had won the World Championship 3 times and the ZrT Trackmania Cup 3 times. Now also winning on a map that he didn't favor, but still was able to collect a round win needed to win the ZrT Trackmania Cup for the 4th time out of 6 possible ones. Winning in front of Bren at 2nd place and Papu at 3rd and Arel at 4th. So, we're having hosted 6 editions of the Cup in solo mode, with 3 of them being only online, and then having 3 with the playoffs offline, we are now entering a new era in the ZrT Trackmania Cup in 2019. This year it will be a 2 versus 2 battle, and for the first time we will have a duo lifting the trophy together.